How's it going, guys? Welcome back to my team career here on F1 22. We are coming off a very disappointing first round in which we saw ourselves struggle absolutely mightily after taking some severe damage and really falling off the pace. And we need to bounce back going into Jeddah. It's hard to get much worse as we set our activities for the week. We are really looking forward to making the most going forward. We are setting our new development items. Our car is definitely not where we need it to be. So we actually complete our rear floor item. That's always the nice one to get first and out of the way. Once you get that first one, you can really start to make some progress as we are checking out the rest of our R&D and what we want to do moving forward. I think either chassis or aerodynamics are definitely some of the most important to do early on, because our car is currently extremely slow and extremely heavy. As we look to move forward now in the week, we actually head to our Pirelli hot lap event, and we have what I believe is a average speed, in which these I feel like are always some of the easier ones to do, just because I feel like even if you aren't used to these supercars, I feel like they usually set pretty reasonable targets for gold. I think I get this one here first try, but really it's just all about taking that major corner as fast as possible and getting back on the gas as soon as you can. As we finish up our run here, we actually see we do not get gold here, as I was just talking about how easy it is. It looks like we're going to need to take our second attempt here, and we will hope to breach that 157.7 kilometers per hour. We really want that extra 1,000 driver acclaim, as well as that $100,000 bonus that you get on top of it. It really would help us out, especially being such a new team in F1. Every dollar counts, and especially if you're trading paint, as you come across the finish line to finish with a 159.1 kilometer per hour average. You can go ahead and skip ahead to our qualifying session. We are running the short qualifying session in this one, as the one shot just doesn't feel right, considering we do the quick practices, as we don't want to spend that much time wearing down the car, and we're trying to move forward. So we do the quick practices, and as we head forward into our first qualifying lap here, we actually find ourselves doing pretty well, coming down off of our current best time. We are still really trying to work out this car and really the best ways to get it around Jeddah. Especially can be a bit difficult early on in your MyTeam career, or at least from my perspective, that definitely feels true. But the good news is, as you continue to learn the tracks and kind of learn the bounds of your car, you can sometimes find yourself almost over a full second under your current delta as you try and claw your way up the grid. Especially talking about us specifically, after such a disappointing first outing in Formula One, in which we decided just to limp home to not fully drop out of our first full weekend in Formula One. We decide to try and make the most of it last week and this week, trying to come back even stronger. As we continue down our second lap, we actually find ourselves doing pretty good on terms of pace. We are still finding ourselves slightly hesitant. You have to wonder how much the damage that we took in the first round and really threw us off is really starting to wear on us, as we actually finish up in P20. And that actually brings us to race day, where we will start right at the back of the grid. And welcome to Jeddah.
Let's take a look at the topographical map of the Jeddah street circuit. As you can see, a number of challenging corners for the drivers to master here. We'll see just how much the teams have benefited from their time spent in practice this weekend. And like many street circuits, this track has the potential to punish drivers that get it wrong. Let's hope we avoid any safety cars today. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Max Verstappen put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he'll start from pole position. And it's Charles Leclerc in P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Sainz, Perez, George Russell, and Hamilton. Fernando Alonso, Bottas, Ocon and Lando Norris, Tsunoda, Gasly, Mick Schumacher and Magnussen, Ricciardo, Vettel, Alex Albon and Lance Stroll, Joe, the rookie, Fittipaldi and Nicholas Latifi. And now it's time to head down to the track.
As we get lined up on the grid for our formation lap, let's talk about what we are focusing on ourselves in this race. So after I harped on it a lot, but it was really such a disappointing first outing for our team that our primary focus going into Jeddah is really just trying to focus on our race, not trying to race anyone else's race. And we are trying to get what we can and trying to get the most out of our car. We will be employing a attempted one-stop strategy in this one that didn't quite pan out for us last time out, but we have a good feeling going into Jeddah that we'll be able to finally get a full race under our belts, and we will finally get to see how we truly stack up to the rest of the field. So as we line back up here in the grid for those lights to go out, and away we will go at Jeddah. And we are all lined up. The lights are on. And lights out, and away we go in Jeddah. We get a decent start, but the performance of our car really showing here as those in front of us as we take a huge lunge down the inside and make up more than a few spots. As we come around, we will settle in slightly behind Pierre Gasly with Kevin Magnussen fighting us on our right. We pull out ahead of him, and as we come around in a hotly contested opening few moments of Jeddah, we find ourselves struggling to really settle down and into this race already. You have to wonder how much nerves really played a part after such a fantastic lunge down the inside of turn one. We find ourselves in P14 sitting behind Pierre Gasly as Kevin Magnussen takes a dive down the inside, and we actually get a little late on the brakes as I feel like it startled us. Luckily, we don't suffer any damage from that, but Magnussen does make the move down the inside, and we settled back one more position into P15. But all things considered, pretty good. As we move forward slightly on this lap, we finally have a bit of a run at Kevin Magnussen, trying to get him back for his overtake earlier on us. We were really settling in behind Pierre Gasly, and he kind of lunged down the inside and didn't give us much of a chance. So here we see our opportunity coming into tier one. We catch up and get a good run, give him a little bit of a bump draft, kind of knock him off his line a little bit. Luckily, no penalty for us. I feel like the FIA knows that we need to give it, everything we can, and I think they let us get away with a little bit. But later, Kevin, not one to forget, coming down the main straight again into turn one, dives down the inside and actually damages our side pod and our underbody, and it is a absolute devastation for us as it really throws us off early in the race, and that's something that we're going to have to deal with for the next 21 laps. And Kevin Magnussen doesn't forget what we did to him, and he returns the favor appropriately, not but just a couple laps later. And we can already feel the bit of performance loss from this damage. But nonetheless, we do find ourselves at the back of Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, and we take a brief look down the inside, hoping to get a move completed, but unfortunately the door kind of closes. Their car is performing well and above ours, so we decide not to take any unnecessary risks in that moment, and we decide to back off as we get a bit of a run down this back straight. We get DRS, but once again, the racing line and this performance and this DRS train that we're currently trying to overtake with Mick Schumacher, Esteban Ocon, and Pierre Gasly, we don't really see an opportunity, and at this point we just need to remind ourselves to be patient as Gasly actually takes a look around the outside of Esteban Ocon. Ocon does well to defend the outside line there. Pierre absolutely wants, as we take a dive down the inside, Esteban Ocon locks up and dives back in on us, and we have front wing damage. Are you kidding me? Ocon locks up but makes a dive back to the inside, and we are the ones who come out worse for wear. Obviously, we're not sure what damage Ocon took there, but he locks up and makes a mistake. We go for the double overtake, and Ocon just absolutely dive bombs us down, back down in the corner, and all of a sudden our race is now severely damaged going forward. Now we find ourselves very similar to what we found ourselves in round one, where we have early wing damage and we have to make a decision of, are we going to pit to fix, or are we just going to try and ride this out as we settle into P13? We have a lot to think about. Moving ahead here a little bit, a couple of laps, we see Mick Schumacher make a mistake coming into turn one. This is not unlike a lot of what we've seen so far in F1 where the AI seems very likely to make a mistake. And this is another one of those situations where we see Mick kind of go wide, and we try and get the move done, and he just brake checks us going into turn two, and that absolutely seals the deal for us, where our front right of our front wing is absolutely taking some damage, and we are feeling plenty of issue already. And this is about as worst case scenario you can imagine for us. We finally get a good start to the race. We don't find ourselves fighting for scraps at the back, and two mistakes made by other people on the track cause us some massive damage that will severely impact our race. But as we get our new strategy, we're hoping to undercut those ahead, and we're just really hoping that it works in the long run. We're going to go straight to the hard tires, and we're going to try and go the distance. I mean, that's really our only strategy here. The front wing, especially on these new cars, from what I can already tell in my short time playing this game, it is extremely important. And then you throw in the fact that we have some underbody damage as well, and our race just seems already over, and it's extremely disappointing, especially following up. We were hoping to have nothing special going into Jeddah, but at the same time, we were really hoping to get one clean race in to really see exactly where we stack up. But some damage in both races we've participated in so far really derails that plan. But at the end of the day, you can only deal with the cards you're dealt as we enter to fix our front end damage, as well as get a fresh set of hard tires that we're hoping to take to the end of the race. You get a good turn in. We'll average about an 8 second as they change the tires, two of those hards, get that front wing replaced, and we are back out once again. It's at this point that, we've already decided last race that we weren't just going to roll over. And so it's at this point where, we find ourselves at the back. But at this point, we know that we have a bit of a pit stop advantage over those ahead of us. So at this point, it's all about trying to catch up those ahead of us and trying to make the most of what this situation gave us. So we will continue to push, and we'll get our head down. Moving ahead a handful of laps, we've made up a bit of time as others start to pit here on lap 11. This is kind of what we were hoping for. Unfortunately, we found ourselves not able to make up as much time as we would have liked getting into the pit stops for the rest of the group, but nonetheless, we have to do what we can. In worst case scenario, we find ourselves back in at least the mix instead of 14 to 20 seconds behind the pack once again. So we find ourselves behind the Albon and Gasly once again, coming out on those cold hard tires. As we know, those tires are a pain to warm up and get really race ready in this game. So at this point, with my tires, who are already more than a few laps old, it's time to push and try and take advantage while they warm up their tires. As we see a brief caution come out that didn't last more than any, is Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso is out of this session. Unfortunate. We don't end up seeing exactly what caused him to go out, but it truly is a shame as we pick up a free place there. And we are, all intents and purposes, up into P20, currently ahead of Stroll, who's still in the race. We find ourselves not last for once. As we move forward here some more, we actually find ourselves in a battle with Alex Albon. We actually managed to make up quite a fair amount of time, as others are pitting and those cold tires take a long time to warm up. We actually get a bit of a run in, and as we take on Alex Albon, we actually managed to get the move done on him on the outside going into turn 1 and 2, and we actually find ourselves up into P16 with only Mick Schumacher ahead of us by 2 seconds. At this point, we're trying to hope to put more of a gap between us and Alex Albon in that Williams. It is a shame to say, but that Williams truly is probably our biggest rival in terms of development. I believe on the R&D chart we are ahead of them, but at the end of the day, they know they have more of those that knowledge and experience and resources than we do right now. As we actually catch the pack, Kevin Magnussen lies before us with Sebastian Vettel in front of him, and we all of a sudden find ourselves once again in the mix, not necessarily for points, but at the end of the day, you know, we are racing other drivers rather than ourselves, as we give our components a good check-in at this point, as we know we have to take these tires to the end. We really need to keep an eye on the tire wear and make sure we don't wear them down too much. In turn 1, and Kevin Magnussen and I do not mix well, as we once again give him a bit of a bump draft, and he once again kind of catches our underbody on the side, absolutely not appreciating our attempts to really put him away for good. We are probably pushing our luck with the FIA going forward, but at the end of the day, we find ourselves in front of Kevin Magnussen, back up into P15, and we have 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel and that Aston Martin ahead of us in P14, and we are finally getting ourselves some confidence to really fight forward. I think it's at this point that the idea of tire wear kind of goes out the window, because it's really easy to get caught up in racing those ahead of you, especially when you're all of a sudden finding yourself making mistakes by bumping off the wall, luckily taking no damage, as we try and prove to the rest of the grid that we are a force to be reckoned with, and they definitely can't take us that lightly. The one downside, though, being the rookies that we are in this big, heavy, you know, not necessarily the nicest and best car on the grid, it's easy to get a little bit of an overextension, as we hope to both keep it competitive, potentially get past a 4-time world champion, but also stay within our own expectations and our own abilities, as we are dancing dangerously close with Sebastian Vettel, risking both damage for him and myself and potentially our races, as we come down here in our final 9 laps in this one in Jeddah. We will hope that, unlike every time before this when we find ourselves in a bit of a fight, we don't find ourselves taking damage and we don't find ourselves having to adjust our strategy in real time. But for now, it just feels good to finally be out on track, battling world champions and new upcomers and old heads like Magnussen and the Haas, as we actually get a fantastic run on Sebastian Vettel down the straight. It'll be a battle of the late breakers as we try and take one around the outside. Unfortunately, the Aston Martin just a little too quick. We get a little dangerously close to the walls. We get a good run. We kind of feint towards Vettel, and we actually pull ahead slightly. Sebastian Vettel decides it's better to give the rookie his moment to shine, and he wisely, probably wisely, backs out of the corner, and we have now overtaken a multiple times over world champion, as we now set Pierre Gasly on our radar. But he didn't become world champion for no reason, as we find ourselves under the glaring eye of Sebastian Vettel. He absolutely will not lie down and die, as he will continue to fight until the end of the race. We come down the final home stretch towards the turn 1 as well as the pit straights, and we hope to hold him off as long as we can, but that Aston Martin in our car just too heavy, too slow. We try and give him some space. We actually managed to hold the position through, but compromising our race line really does not do us any favors as Vettel makes his way past. We decide not to fight too much, just because, you know, we still have at this point 8 laps to go, and our tires are much older than those of the cars around us. So at this point, we settle back behind Vettel, and it's, like I was saying, just super nice to battle with a 4-time world champion as we go quite a bit wide. Probably some form of warning should be given there, but I guess the FIA and the stewards didn't see any real advantage gained, and nothing comes down from those above. As Vettel kind of pulls away from us slightly, we really are reminded that we really need to get deeper into our R&D chart and really start bringing some upgrades as soon as we possibly can, because our car is big, our car is slow, and actually, as we see ourselves lock up and make a huge mistake as we actually lock up and go way into the corner, and Magnussen is not one to miss an opportunity to overtake us, especially after the race that we've had with him, and that is extremely disappointing. You know, like I was saying, it's easy to get caught up in racing, and you have to wonder if battling Sebastian Vettel really got to us, as we're just a little too late on the brakes. We run a little long, make that mistake, Kevin Magnussen takes advantage, and we all of a sudden find ourselves back down into P16. At this point, we know we're probably not fighting for points, but at this point we're fighting for pride. As we continue to keep an eye on our car's damage as well as our tires, we still have 7 laps to go. We need to take these tires in the end, and at this point we're trying to do a lot of calculations in our head all at once on who are actually racing, what's worth fighting, what's worth not. And I think it's easier said than done in racing, that just because it may not be worth fighting with someone who clearly has the better car, sometimes you just need to give them a little jolt, as Alex Albon comes through on those fresher tires and probably a bit of a nicer car. We decide to send one down the inside going into turn 1, and we actually give it back to him just slightly, you know, really trying to make a point. And that's kind of what I was talking about, you know, maybe not necessarily the smartest move, but we're trying to send a message that, you know, we're not going to roll over and we're actually going to fight until the checkered flag. As we come down to our final 5 laps, we actually get a decent run on Kevin Magnussen here in Sector 1. This sector really gave us a lot of trouble in Jeddah, but towards the end of the race, we finally started to find a bit of more of a groove. Nothing perfect, but, you know, enough that we're actually able to kind of fight back at Kevin Magnussen a bit, as we actually run dangerously into Magnussen's rear right tire, once again flirting with damage and absolutely not doing ourselves to ingratiate ourselves with Kevin Magnussen, that's to say the least. But we continue to fight with Kevin Magnussen. We have kind of left Alex Albon a bit behind us. He's hovering around that magical 1 second mark, but he continues to get DRS from us as we continue to get DRS from Kevin Magnussen, who continues to get DRS from Sebastian Vettel. A bit of a DRS train coming around Jeddah as we once again tap the wall, and I believe that gives us a little bit of a jolt. And this is one of our first big decisions we have to make. Apparently that jiggled enough loose in the car that really starts to make us question whether or not we need to pit for new tires as well, or, you know, potentially try and preserve what we can from this car, as that last jolt and meeting with the wall definitely did us no favors. But as we see Kevin Magnussen and Sebastian Vettel kind of fighting going into the ever famous turn 1, that gives us an opportunity to kind of fight back at Kevin again in Kevin's favorite spot to meet us coming out the exit of turn 2. You know, those two fighting really gives us an opportunity to stay with them and potentially try and capitalize on any mistakes that they make, while also trying not to make any mistakes ourselves, as we once again get a decent run coming out of this first sector towards Kevin Magnussen, as Sebastian Vettel kind of gets lucky with us and Kevin having to defend from us. We doing the world champion a bit of a favor, to say the least. But Kevin, you know, not one to be distracted by us for too long, will soon leave us in the dust, and really showing off the power of that Haas car compared to our newcomer. Barely any upgrades, or almost no upgrades at all. Setups, as well as the driver who's currently sat in the seat. But as we come down to our final couple of laps, at this point, we know we're out of the points, but we're fighting all the way home to the finish line, and this is going to be a solid recovery race after round 1, which saw us absolutely embarrassed to be out there. we definitely just lack the straight line speed that the Aston Martin, as well as any of the other cars, as both Magnussen and Vettel get a slow exit out of turn 2. We try and take advantage, but the straight line, the grip, our tires are absolutely destroyed, as we see here, just struggling to get the car slowed down. And I think it's around this point that you really just need to start thinking about, your less than 2 full laps left. The tires are absolutely destroyed. Sure, you might get a run at Magnussen and Vettel, but how much is it really worth the risk with, extremely degraded tires? That doesn't stop us from trying as we try and get late on the brakes, but with the damage that our cars sustained, as well as the level of degradation on our tires, we just are unable to complete the move, and we have to back out of anything worse. As at this point, we're finishing in the midfield. It's better than a non-finish at all, or worse, even a 20-30 second back finish, as we saw in round 1. So at this point, we're trying to take advantage of any mistakes that they make, but at the same time trying to remain smart and not end our race with only a few miles to go, as Sebastian Vettel and Kevin Magnussen don't seem to be getting the same memo of being out of the points, as Vettel kind of sends one around the outside and Kevin Magnussen cuts him off perfectly and closes it off, and Vettel is forced to back out as we come down the pit straight to begin our last lap. This has been more of a teaching and learning lesson than I believe our first outing was. Our first outing, the results from that were more, as we actually get tapped by Sebastian Vettel as Albon absolutely tries to send a dive bomb down the inside and really sends us for one. We were not expecting that. At this point, we tap Vettel and almost lose the rear end, but thankfully, Albon bumping us probably sent him off just slightly, and luckily Zhou Guanyu isn't able to make a run at us either, as we continue to hold on to P16. But like I was saying, as Charles Leclerc actually comes home to win in Jeddah is an impressive one. Charles Leclerc off to a fantastic start here in this 2022 Formula One season, as we are finally getting our final lap truly underway. We still remain behind Sebastian Vettel, and with this race, it's more of a learning opportunity than the first round. As I was saying before, the first round was more about proving that, we're not going to go anywhere and we're going to finish no matter what. This one, truly a learning opportunity to learn from our mistakes. Finishing in P16 will do that, as we will actually hold off Alex Albon as he kind of starts to back off as we near the finish. Well, we'll learn a lot from this. There's definitely more to be said about composure, more to be said about when to take risks, when to really seize those moments, and when to back off and kind of, let it come to us, as we actually, with our degraded tires, Albon takes one last glance down the inside, and we actually do end up bumping Sebastian Vettel finally. After 25 laps of really riding that line, we find ourselves damaging our front wing, but coming home in P16 in our first midfield finish of the season, as Lewis Hamilton comes home with driver of the day. Congratulations to him. Congratulations to Charles and Ferrari. We will be on the podium one day. Unfortunately, it is not now, as it looks like it is a Charles Leclerc win, a Lewis Hamilton third, and what I can imagine is probably a Max Verstappen P2. It is a rainbow podium as Charles Leclerc celebrates with his crew. It is an absolutely fantastic win for him. Congratulations to him and Ferrari, like I was saying. And seeing the podium presentation only drives that fire in us to continue pushing, to continue to strive to be better, to finally get the car that we want, to get the drivers to perform the way we want them and need them to. And one day it will be our team celebrating on the podium. But congratulations to Charles, to Max, to Lewis, and this has been a fantastic learning opportunity, and I can't wait to see where we go from here as the champagne shower comes to a close. And here are the final results. Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz, and Checo Perez for your top 5. That will do us for here in our weekend in Jeddah. We will see you guys next week, where we hope to continue improving. See you then.